All right, guys, section 12.1, the causes of World War One. This is the beginning of the fourth period, the last period of European history. We've set our classes up in the four periods, and in 1914, when World War One starts, everything changes. Socially, politically, culturally, intellectually, it all changes because of World War One. So, what is this war? First of all, like, there's our menu, there's that. First of all, it's kind of odd that even maybe for some in 1913 that the thought of war would even happen, because Europe in the late 1900s or 1800s was awesome. The era of the Belle Epoque, the beautiful era in Western Europe, consolidated financial interest, imperialism brought massive wealth and cultural superiority to Europe, and everything was great, right? Look at these rich people enjoying life. I mean, that's just the way to do it, right? So their lives are great. You have technological exhibits like in Paris in 1900 showing the inventions of mankind. You have cafes in the middle of these urban areas which allow people on their days off and maybe their long lunch breaks from their jobs or professional jobs, they can come in and enjoy, and you see all these happy people here. So the question is, where does it all go wrong? And that's where we get into the causes of the Great War. So there are four long-term causes, and then there is one significant short-term event, which is going to lead us into World War One. So our causes here are symbolized by an acronym called MANIA. And MANIA is an easy way to remember these five terms. Militarism, okay? The belief in a strong military, the glorification and belief in having a strong military. Alliances, so having friends that sometimes will punch other people for you when you get punched. Nationalism, you know what that means. Imperialism, you know that one too. And then the fifth and last in the short-term cause is an assassination. So those are the five core causes of World War One. Let's take a look at a map here. And this has had some significant changes since, say, 1848. Because first of all, Germany and Italy are unified. The Ottoman Empire has receded into what we call today modern-day Turkey. And you also have there several independent countries in the Balkans, which is our, let me touch this here, there we go, let me get my pen rocking and rolling here, which is Southeastern Europe, the Balkans, Balkans, the region of Europe where you're starting to see all those ethnicities start to get their political independence. So you have that going on. You also have imperialism in North Africa. And then basically everything else is generally the same. This area of Germany right here used to be France, but it is Germany after the Franco-Prussian War in 1871. So basically that's it. I mean, there's not a whole lot going on in Western Europe that's different, but Central and Eastern Europe certainly have changed since 1848, especially with the recession of the Ottoman Empire. Now, let's start looking at our causes. We'll start with the M, militarism, the belief in a strong military. Well, as it is, going through the late 1800s, Germany and Britain start engaging in what's called an arms race, where they basically are collecting weapons and building and manufacturing weapons using the tools of the Second Industrial Revolution. They engage in this arms race, particularly in a weapon called a dreadnought, which is a giant battleship. I think I have a picture of it. Yeah, there it is. There's a dreadnought. And these are made of steel. So steel, a product of the Second Industrial Revolution, used to create more efficient and perhaps more deadly weapons. So that militarism is going to drive up kind of the arms race between them. And one thing to note is that the British always have to have a strong navy. In fact, the strongest navy in all of Europe. Otherwise, they would be threatened being a small island. If the Germans have a stronger navy, then that's trouble for the British. So that's why they are engaging in this arms race. The Germans just to challenge the British, and the British obviously to help secure their own security. Imperialism, the quest for colonies, creates tension between countries. That's easy enough concept. Country A wants a place, country B wants a place. They might fight over it. The one area that is fought over immediately before World War I is Morocco. Morocco is a place that is battled over between the countries France and Germany in particular, and Britain is also in there. So Morocco is a place in northwest Africa that is fought over. There's a dreadnought, and back to a map. Now, here's the issue. For Germany, their problem geographically is that they're in the middle of Europe. So they're going to need, obviously, to have a strong military to be able to punch their weight from challengers in all directions. Well, Germany has that. Remember, Prussia was very militaristic, and the Prussians led the unification of Germany. So Germany adopted that militaristic attitude. But the further problem is that they might have enemies on both sides. So, like, there's a possibility here that Russia and France, if they align together, might bring trouble for the Germans, because then you have enemies on both sides. You have to account for that when a war breaks out, especially if Russia and France are working together. It may put Germany in the middle and in a pickle. So instead of like fighting your opponent straight on, if you have opponents on both sides of you, now you have to get in the camp. Okay, wait. You have to like split your arms so that you can both sides. Okay? You know, you can't do that unless you have all like the jewels that I have and like the 6 chins and things like that. So in any case, you got to be able to punch on both sides, and that splits as strong as you could be. So for Germany, it's important that Russia and France never be together and never be allied together. Otto von Bismarck understood that. When he took over as Chancellor in Germany in the year 1871, he knew that it was important that be the case, that he keep Russia and France isolated so that they do not work together. So what he did was form alliances with Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Italy in order to isolate France and keep the balance of power away from the French. The reason why he wanted to isolate France and not Russia, for instance, was that they believed that the French had more of a motivation perhaps to hurt Germany. Think back to 1871, the Franco-Prussian War, and remember the just butt whooping that the Germans or the Prussians put on France, and then the corresponding ceremony in Versailles to put the cherry on top of the unification of Germany. So he's wanting then to isolate France, make sure France has no friends, and Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Italy work together with Germany. So this is all great, working well until then, the year 1890. And Bismarck is dismissed. Tensions then will begin to rise because Wilhelm II, who is your new Kaiser, okay, leader of Germany, Wilhelm II, he lets the treaty with Russia expire. He basically lets that just go away. While doing so, and while doing that, perhaps in his own belief in German superiority, we don't need to like do these alliance stuff. We don't need to worry about that. Russia then becomes allies with France. And then Britain becomes allies with France and Russia because France needed France. And then Britain was scared of the mounting militarism. So all of a sudden you have a situation where Britain, France, and Russia all on the same team, and Germany is the one that, in particular here, is isolated. This is a fun cartoon back in the early part of that discussion in which France is totally isolated from the German alliance system led by Bismarck. But when that goes away and you stop the alliance here with Russia, then the Russians are going to look out for the sad girl. Okay? It's a bear and the sad girl. Let's go to Locks and the one bear. I don't know. Write the story. So where we are pre-World War I is this alliance system. Okay? You have, in the Triple Entente, you have Russia, France, and Britain. And in the Triple Alliance, you have Austria, Hungary, Germany, Italy. Basically, the terms of these alliances is that if one side is threatened or if one side is attacked, like say that Germany like invades France, then Russia and Britain will jump in to help their French friends. Okay, so you see how this works. The alliances might be designed to stop war from happening because you know if you pick on someone, then it might make it a bigger conflict, one you don't want. But at the same time, if a conflict does break out, bam, it's going to blow up in a hurry because of this alliance system. Now, speaking of explosions, let's head to the Balkans. Remember, Southeast Europe, nationalism had created a powder keg there. Many different ethnicities, all looking for independence, all looking for their own political country, their political status. It's going to create problems because we've got several issues in play. One, the Eastern question. What's going to happen to the Ottoman Empire? Is the Ottoman Empire going to disappear? Are they going to reassess or reassert themselves in Southeast Europe? We don't know what's going to happen when they disappear with that power vacuum. And this shows you kind of ethnically what and how complicated really this is, because these are different ethnic groups that are hanging out here in Southeast Europe. It's a confusing mess trying to design nation states that appeal to singular ethnic groups when you have so many different groups there. You also have the question, kind of the build on that, of Pan-Slavism, the idea that eventually all the Slavic people, Slavic, all the Slavic people will have their own country, much the way the Germans or the French have their own country. And the issue with the Pan-Slavic movement is that Russia was assumed to be the leader because the Russians are Slavic ethnically. And the thought is that they would come in, maybe take over some of those smaller areas in Southeast Europe, in the Balkans, and form this giant super country. So that doubt, the Eastern question, independent countries late in the 1800s, there were a lot of issues. But it's going to kind of get turned on its head in the early 1900s when Austria-Hungary makes the decision to annex or take Bosnia. And they're looking to expand to the south. And here's what I mean by that. So you have the Austria-Hungarian Empire. They take this area, they annex this area called Bosnia there in the circle. And then perhaps they start looking south and they look for more land and more area to take. And that brings us to an independent country called Serbia. Serbia is very nervous about Austria-Hungary's activity, that they're going to come in and basically take their independence and take their country over. And it's a country that had existed for like 40 years. 40. Okay, so it's not been around a long time, Serbia, so they're very nervous about Austria-Hungary's activity. Well, as it happens in the year 1914, Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, the heir to the throne, is visiting the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo to monitor troop movements and have a military parade. But he's going to be met there by a group called the Black Hand. And this is a Serbian nationalist group, a group that is all about the independence of Serbia. They're led by a man named Gavrilo Princip, who is a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb who is dying of tuberculosis and willing to commit an act of murder that's going to set the world on its head. Him and his group work together, immediately having many errors, a comedy of errors even, but they work together to assassinate and kill, I guess if you assassinate, you're killing, but to murder the Archduke. And this is huge news, right? I mean, it's the heir to the throne. It's basically the vice president. New York Times today, later, June 28th is when it happened, 1914. And they put out this news story about this assassination. The question is, though, like, how do we get to World War I out of this? This seems just to be an Austria-Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia issue, like a very regional thing. But, and I know this GIF is like mesmerizing, so just focus as much as you can. Austria-Hungary will declare war on Serbia on June 28, 1914. A month after. They send in an ultimatum that is not accepted. An ultimatum that says, hey, let us into Serbia to try to help with the investigation. And the Serbs are like, no, I'm not letting you in. You may not leave. So Serbia says no. Austria-Hungary declares war. Russia then mobilizes their troops to help their ally Serbia. And that means you get your troops like put in place to fight a battle. And you're like, why did they do it slowly? Remember this from 10.3. Russia is big and they're awkward and they're slow and there's not enough railroads and there's not enough factories. So they're getting their troops ready as quickly as they can, but it's a slow process. Kaiser Wilhelm II, then, remember, the leader of Germany, pledges a blank check of support for Austria-Hungary, saying, you know what, our Austrian friends, whatever you want to do, go for it, right? We got you in any way, shape, or form. We got your back any way possible. And then the rest of the dominoes continue to fall. And we'll look in class, we'll look at that process of how do you get Britain and how do you get France in this, and how does Germany, what do they do? But in any case, the dominoes fall, and from this assassination, the rivalries from imperialism, the belief in military strength, the belief in your national pride, and the alliance system helped take an assassination and turn it into World War I. I might post some videos on the playlist to kind of illustrate that a little more. I definitely will post a video watched in class on the Archduke's assassination. But that's all we got here for 12.1. We're already in Unit 12. It's crazy. 12.1. That's it. See you later.